A piercing scream tore through the quiet, late-night air in Santee, California. The sound was loud enough to wake the neighbors, but no one dared to call 911. They thought it was just a nightmare, a domestic dispute, or maybe just their imagination. The next morning, when the apartment door opened, a horrifying scene unfolded. A 20-year-old woman lying motionless on the floor, a telephone cord wrapped tightly around her neck. The killer had vanished without a trace. Could anyone find the person who took her life that fateful night? It would take a full 40 years for the answer to finally emerge. Welcome to the Case Files, where we bring you true crime stories, shocking cases, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Today, we're diving into one of the most compelling cases in California history, a case once lost to the shadows of time until modern science brought it back into the light. In this episode, we're taking a deep dive into the infamous case of the Michelle Wyatt murder case, a 40-year mystery and the return of justice. The brutal murder in Santee, California in 1980, finally solved through cutting-edge investigative genetic genealogy. Part 1. Setting the scene, a peaceful town and a young woman full of dreams. Santee, California, a small town east of San Diego, known for its peaceful scenery, rolling hills, and fresh air. It's the kind of place where people feel safe, where families build their lives and nurture their dreams. But in the fall of 1980, that peaceful atmosphere was shattered by a horrific crime. Michelle Louise Wyatt, 20 years old, was a promising young woman. She grew up in San Carlos, a nearby area, in a loving and close-knit family. Michelle was a college student with a passion for art. She loved to paint, dreamed of attending art school, and had clear plans for her future: graduate, build a career, get married, and have children. Michelle was outgoing, kind, loyal, and lived every moment to the fullest. Friends and family described her as a wonderful person who brought joy to everyone around her. When she turned 18, Michelle decided to leave her parents' home and live independently in an apartment at 10586 Kerrigan Court in Santee. She shared the place with Rita, a close roommate. Michelle's life seemed to be on an upward trajectory. She had a steady job at a local supermarket and was dating a young man. Everything appeared to be going the way she hoped, but fate had a tragic ending in store that no one could have anticipated. Part 2. The fateful night, October 9th, 1980. The night of October 8th into the early morning of October 9th, 1980, a night that would forever change many lives. Michelle spent that evening with her boyfriend. They played pool in the complex's garage, then went inside to watch TV and talk. Around midnight, after spending a few hours together, Michelle's boyfriend decided to head home because he had to work early the next morning. According to his statement, he left the apartment around 12:30 or 12:45 a.m. on October 9th. Before leaving, he locked the front door, an important detail that would later raise many questions. Not long after Michelle's boyfriend left, something horrifying began to unfold. Around 1 a.m., several neighbors living nearby were awakened by screams coming from Michelle's apartment. One neighbor later recalled hearing cries for help, but she wasn't sure if they were real or just part of a nightmare. She felt worried, but ultimately decided to go back to sleep and didn't call the police, a decision she would regret for the rest of her life. No one knows exactly what happened inside that apartment that night, but what police discovered later showed that Michelle endured terrifying final moments of her life. Part 3. Discovery of the body, a haunting scene. Around 6:30 p.m. on October 9th, 1980, Rita, Michelle's roommate, returned home after being away for the day. As soon as she entered the apartment, Rita felt something was wrong. The front door was unlocked, highly unusual, because Michelle was always very careful about security. The morning newspaper was still lying on the porch. The porch light was still on, signs that Michelle hadn't started her day. When Rita walked into the living room, she witnessed a scene she would never forget. Michelle, 20 years old, was lying motionless on the floor. Her pink bathrobe was turned inside out, and a telephone cord was wrapped tightly around her neck. Rita panicked and ran to a neighbor's house, hoping this was just a nightmare. The neighbor immediately ran back with Rita to check. After confirming what Rita had seen, he immediately called the police. Part 4. The initial investigation. A crime scene full of mysteries. San Diego County Sheriff's deputies quickly arrived at the scene. The sheriff's homicide unit was called in and took over the investigation. Even the most seasoned investigators were shocked by the brutal scene. Michelle had been savagely attacked. The killer had used multiple items from her own apartment as weapons. In addition to the telephone cord around her neck, police discovered a wooden cue stick from the pool table had also been used to attack the victim. The bathrobe turned inside out, and the position of the body suggested Michelle may have been sexually assaulted. Police carefully collected the robe and sent it to the lab for analysis. During the crime scene examination, investigators discovered several notable details. No signs of forced entry. The front door wasn't broken. There were no marks indicating the killer had to force their way in. This suggested Michelle may have willingly opened the door for her attacker, someone she knew or trusted. Purse ransacked. The contents of Michelle's purse were scattered around. Some items were even thrown into the toilet. Her money was missing, but police didn't believe this was a simple robbery. Fingerprints on the medicine cabinet. On the medicine cabinet in the bathroom, investigators found fingerprints. This was considered an important clue, but to use it, they had to identify the suspect. The autopsy report conducted by the medical examiner's office confirmed the cause of death was asphyxiation due to strangulation. Michelle had been sexually assaulted, and seminal fluid was found on her body. However, in 1980, DNA analysis technology was very limited. Police could only perform basic blood typing tests with the biological samples collected. Part 5. Hunting for suspects. The initial leads. Based on witness statements and crime scene evidence, police determined Michelle was killed around 1 a.m. on October 9th, just 15 to 30 minutes after her boyfriend left. First suspect, Michelle's boyfriend. Teddy, a neighbor and close friend of Michelle's, provided important information. He said that night he saw Michelle and her boyfriend playing pool in the garage. When Teddy was getting ready for bed around 11 p.m., he noticed the garage door was closed, but the boyfriend's car was still parked outside. The next morning, when he woke up at 8 a.m., the car was gone. The timeline matching the boyfriend's statement made him the primary suspect. Police immediately brought him in for questioning. Michelle's boyfriend confirmed he had been with her past midnight and left around 12:30, 12:45 a.m. He insisted he had locked the door before leaving. However, the door was actually unlocked when Rita came home, a contradiction that raised police suspicions. Throughout the interrogation, Michelle's boyfriend appeared extremely grief-stricken and seemed tormented by guilt. He felt that his decision to go home had left Michelle to face the killer alone. He repeatedly insisted he loved Michelle and would never hurt her. Fingerprints found in Michelle's home also matched her boyfriend, but this made sense since he visited frequently. Police asked him to take a polygraph test, and he passed. He also provided a blood sample for analysis and was willing to cooperate with police. Michelle's family and friends all confirmed they knew of no conflicts in the couple's relationship. Michelle's mother, Margaret Wyatt, said her daughter always shared everything with her and never mentioned anything concerning. Ultimately, police didn't have enough evidence to charge Michelle's boyfriend, and he was removed from the suspect list. Second suspect, Mike, the obsessive co-worker. After eliminating the boyfriend, police shifted their investigation to another man, Mike, a co-worker of Michelle's at the supermarket. According to statements from Michelle's friends, Mike had romantic feelings for her and had pursued her aggressively. However, Michelle didn't reciprocate his feelings. She had confided in friends that she felt Mike was stalking her, and he made her afraid. Mike even bragged to friends that he was dating Michelle, a completely false claim that made her extremely anxious. A few days before Michelle was killed, Mike had confronted her boyfriend and expressed jealousy, saying he wanted Michelle for himself and was ready to fight. When police contacted Mike, he initially refused to cooperate. Only after his mother called and urged him did Mike agree to come to the police station. During the interrogation, Mike appeared extremely nervous and exhibited strange behavior. He admitted to passing by Michelle's home in the days before she was killed. When asked where he was during the time of the murder, Mike's statement began to contradict itself. At first he said he was at his father's house, but then changed his answer and claimed he had gone on a date with a girl at the beach. When investigators asked why he couldn't remember the details of his alibi clearly, Mike stopped answering and asked for a lawyer. Police were almost certain Mike was the perpetrator. However, they had no physical evidence linking him to the case, no DNA, no witnesses, nothing that could bring Mike to trial. Part 6. The case goes cold. Years of loss. After eliminating both primary suspects, the investigation gradually hit a dead end. Police interviewed dozens of people, distributed flyers, appealed for witnesses, but no leads produced results. The media widely covered the case, but the killer had vanished like smoke. Many people began to fear that Michelle Wyatt's murder would never be solved. But there was one person who never gave up: Margaret Wyatt, Michelle's mother. She made finding her daughter's killer her life's mission. She and Michelle's friends spent countless hours distributing flyers and posting posters throughout San Diego. Her campaign attracted significant media attention. In one interview, Margaret said, "I miss her so much. What I'm most afraid of is dying without knowing who did this. I will never give up." Years passed. Margaret grew older, but her determination never faded. In another interview in 2020, when she was 79 years old, she said, "Honey, I'm 79, and I don't have much longer. So, are they going to be able to crack this case before I go? I really hope so." Part 7. New technology. Hope rekindled. 1996. Michelle Wyatt's case was reviewed with new DNA technology. Nearly 90 potential suspects were systematically contacted and interviewed. Many provided biological samples for comparison with previously collected evidence. However, once again, no suspect was identified. 2000. The evidence was re-examined using more sensitive methods. Through these tests, evidence showed there were 2 separate DNA profiles at the crime scene. The sexual assault kit revealed one of the DNA profiles belonged to Michelle's boyfriend, and the other came from an unidentified male. Michelle's boyfriend was officially eliminated from the suspect list once more. 2001. The unknown suspect's DNA profile was entered into the Combined DNA Index System, CODIS, the National Criminal DNA Database. But unfortunately, there was never a match. This meant the killer had either never been arrested for another crime after 1980, or had died, or was no longer living in the United States. March 2020, the case was reviewed once more to determine if any new technology could advance it. The California Department of Justice, DOJ, conducted a familial DNA search, but still didn't obtain any viable suspects. The case fell silent once again. Many believed the truth would forever be buried with time. Part 8. Historic breakthrough. Investigative genetic genealogy. September 2020, a new ray of hope emerged. After ABC 10 News published a special report on Michelle Wyatt's case, the cold case team of the San Diego County Sheriff's Homicide Unit decided to use a revolutionary new technology: investigative genetic genealogy. This technique combines DNA science with the art of genealogy. the same method successfully used to catch the Golden State Killer, one of California's most notorious criminals. The process works as follows. Develop DNA profile. The unknown suspect's DNA profile is developed from evidence collected at the crime scene. Upload to commercial genealogy sites. The DNA profile is uploaded to commercial genealogy websites like GEDmatch or Family Tree DNA, platforms that allow law enforcement participation. Build family trees. The investigation team forms family histories in the form of trees, searching for relatives whose DNA profiles match the suspects. Contact relatives. When speaking with relatives, detectives identify themselves, explain what they're investigating, describe the process, and ask for assistance. Collect confirmatory DNA samples. This process eventually leads investigators to closer relatives who provide DNA samples to confirm the identification. Over the next 9 months, the investigation team, with assistance from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, and other law enforcement agencies nationwide, worked tirelessly. And finally, in August 2021, they found the answer. Part 9. The Killer. Finally identified. John Patrick Hogan. The killer's name was John Patrick Hogan, also known as Pat Hogan. Hogan was born in 1961 in Arizona. He moved to Santee sometime in the 1970s and attended Santana High School, the same area as Michelle. Most suspiciously, Hogan may have once lived in the same condominium complex as Michelle. Hogan had many friends in Michelle's complex, which he frequently visited. At the time of Michelle's murder, Hogan lived in Santee, just over a mile away, about 1.6 kilometers from her apartment. Investigators discovered Hogan had a criminal record for theft and drug-related offenses, but no charges involving violence. All these offenses occurred before California began collecting criminal DNA, the reason he never appeared in the CODIS database. In 1979, Hogan joined the U.S. Air Force and was stationed in New Mexico for a brief time. Initially, this detail nearly derailed the entire investigation because investigators thought Hogan couldn't have been in Santee the night of the murder. However, when Detective Brian Patterson, assigned to the case in 2019, checked Hogan's military records, he discovered a crucial fact. Hogan was on leave from October 1st to October 10th, 1980, right during the time Michelle was killed on October 9th. All the pieces finally fell into place. Through further DNA testing with blood samples preserved from when Hogan died, experts discovered DNA found on Michelle's body was a 100% match to John Patrick Hogan. Police had finally found Michelle Wyatt's killer. Part 10. Reconstructing the crime. What happened that fateful night? Based on evidence and statements, police reconstructed what likely happened the night of October 8th to 9th, 1980. Around 12:30 to 12:45 a.m., Michelle's boyfriend left the apartment and locked the front door. He didn't know someone was watching. Shortly after, John Patrick Hogan, who may have known Michelle through mutual connections in the complex, saw her boyfriend leave. Hogan was on military leave and may have been visiting old friends in the area. Hogan knew Michelle was alone because her roommate Rita was away. He saw an opportunity and decided to act. Around 12:45 a.m., Hogan went to Michelle's apartment and knocked on the door. Michelle, possibly thinking it was her boyfriend returning because he forgot something, quickly threw on her pink bathrobe and went downstairs to open the door. But when she opened the door, she didn't see her boyfriend, but John Patrick Hogan, someone she may have recognized, but never suspected of evil intentions. 1:00 a.m. Hogan attacked Michelle. She screamed for help. The screams neighbors heard, but no one called 911. Hogan strangled her with the telephone cord taken from her own apartment until she stopped breathing. Afterward, he rifled through Michelle's purse, took her money, and scattered items around to make it look like a robbery. He tried to cover his tracks by throwing some items into the toilet, but accidentally left fingerprints on the medicine cabinet. Hogan left the scene and disappeared into the night. For the next 40 years, he lived a normal life, moving back and forth between Arizona, Idaho, and California. No one knew he was the person who had taken a 20-year-old woman's life. Part 11. The killer is dead. Justice never came. But there's a painful truth. John Patrick Hogan died in 2000 at age 42 from a drug overdose. Exactly 24 years after Michelle was killed. An eerie detail many believe was not a coincidence. This meant Hogan would never face justice in a courtroom. He would never be arrested, never stand trial, and never serve time for the crime he committed. Police typically resolve cases by arresting the criminal, but in this case, they couldn't do that. All they could do was inform Michelle's family that they had found their daughter's killer and give them the answer they'd been waiting for 40 years. Part 12. Michelle's family, pain and release. In August 2021, detectives met with Michelle's family and shared the investigation results. It was a bittersweet moment. Margaret Wyatt, 80 years old, and her husband finally had the answer they'd been seeking for 40 years. But their daughter was gone forever. In an interview with CBS 8 San Diego, Margaret said, "At first I thought the answer would bring closure, but since he's dead, we still have so many unanswered questions." Still, knowing who the killer was helped her begin the healing process, though she would never completely overcome the pain of losing her child. Detective Brian Patterson, who led the investigation in its final phase, expressed deep gratitude to everyone who helped, especially John Hogan's family. Importantly, Hogan's family cooperated with investigators, providing DNA samples and necessary information to confirm the killer's identity. Of course, they hoped their relative wasn't a criminal, but they were willing to do the right thing. Without their cooperation, the case could never have been solved. Part 13. Michelle's legacy, meaning from loss. In memory of Michelle, her best friend Susan became a volunteer at a crisis center, helping women who have experienced sexual violence. This was Susan's way of honoring her dear friend and turning pain into positive action. The Michelle Wyatt case has become a symbol of the power of modern technology in solving cold cases. Investigative genetic genealogy has opened a new era in criminal investigation, bringing hope to thousands of other families awaiting justice. The San Diego County Sheriff's Office stated, Michelle's murder would likely have gone unsolved if not for the use of investigative genetic genealogy. Since then, the cold case team has used similar techniques to solve many other cases, including the 2003 murder of Lori Potter and the arrest of her husband, Jack Potter, in May 2021. The story of Michelle Louise Wyatt is a painful reminder of the cruelty of crime, but also a testament to the power of perseverance and faith in justice. For 40 years, Michelle's family never gave up. Margaret Wyatt, a resilient mother, devoted the rest of her life to seeking the truth. And finally, thanks to advances in science and technology, they got their answer. This case also shows the importance of speaking up when you witness something wrong. If one of the neighbors had called 911 when they heard Michelle's cries for help, perhaps this tragedy could have been prevented. The investigation into Michelle Wyatt's murder is still ongoing. The cold case team wants to speak with anyone who has information about the murder or knew John Pat Hogan in the late 1970s and early 1980s. If you have information, please contact Homicide Unit, 858-285-63 or after hours, 858-565-5200. San Diego County Crime Stoppers, 888-580-8477. You can remain anonymous. This is the Case Files, where we never forget the victims, never give up on the truth, and always believe that justice, however delayed, will come. Thank you for listening to this story. If you found this video meaningful, Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next shocking case. Leave your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about this case? Should genetic genealogy technology be used more widely in criminal investigations? See you in the next episode. Michelle Louise Wyatt, 1960-1980, gone but never forgotten.